Neil Brown just has that it factor, I believe.
He's bought into the program.
Everybody in the Big 12 is going to know his name, and all the quarterbacks are going to feel his pain.
That underdog mentality's always been big for West Virginia.
We're just heartbroken that we were not good at our jobs.
He is the modern-day Don Nehlen.
Trust the climb.
And now it's time for the Country Roads Webcast. Mountaineer Nation, welcome to another edition of the Country Roads Webcast. I'll be your host again today, filling in for Jordan Cruz. My name is Stephen Vestal. As always, I'm joined by the majestic Bradley Brown. How you doing, Bradley?
How's it going?
All right, today we're going to be going over the Baylor Bears and the matchup that West Virginia has this weekend with them down in Waco. Noon kickoff for us and 11 o'clock kickoff for those guys down there. They apparently have sold this game out because apparently they're pretty excited to play the Mountaineers. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. They've, on paper, these two teams are evenly matched. Give me your opening thoughts on what you think about the Baylor Bears and how do you think the Mountaineers will fare against these guys this weekend.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a little bit busier week for us. As you guys can see, Jordan's not here, so we've all had a pretty busy week trying to get this out later than what we usually do. Life gets in the way sometimes. So going through and looking at Baylor, because I haven't really kept up with them that much. To be honest, they're about in the same situation that we are. A lot of people are comparing us in the exact same kind of way. Baylor's got a really unproven quarterback back there. Their offense is a little bit more explosive than ours. They're definitely having bigger explosive plays than we are. Their defense is pretty good in the Big 12 right now. So it's going to be a test, and I think it's going to be a good testament of, do we rebound from last week? Is our team going to have their head on straight with this weekend? We haven't really seen WVU excel on the road under Neil Brown so far, so this would be a really good win if he goes down to Waco and gets a win in a sold-out crowd. So there's going to be a lot of things to look forward to this game, and hopefully, we come out with a win.
Yeah, I'm like you. I think these teams are really evenly matched. Obviously, Baylor has done a little bit better on offense, I think, judging by the competition that they've played, but they've also played pretty good offense for, I think it was 3 drives against Iowa State, and then their offense sputtered for like the rest of the game and into the next game. So they're going through some offensive woes as well. And Gary Bohannon, like you said, he's not as proven as a lot of the other quarterbacks in the Big 12 right now. I do think that he can throw it a little bit better than Jared Deggy. With everything, taken into account, I do think that this, like every other game that West Virginia's played so far, will be a defensive ball game. Looking back at the last 2 matchups between these two schools, 2 years ago it was I think it was 14-14 heading into triple overtime or double overtime, if I'm not mistaken. And then last year, of course, West Virginia pulls out the win 17-14, I think it was. So you got under 20 by both teams in each of the last 2 years, and that's when you didn't have good defense or wasn't supposed to have good defense in the Big 12 conference. So I don't think that this year is going to be any different. I think this will be a very, very defensive game because I don't think either offense is going to come out and show you anything more than what they've already shown you this year, given the how respected both of these defenses are so far throughout this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, outside of, Texas and maybe Iowa State, I don't think we're going to see very many offensive games in West Virginia's future in general. I think if we're going to be still relying on our defense pretty heavily throughout the rest of the year, unless our offense can get their line sorted out. And I think if we can get the line figured out, then we'll have a little bit better offense going forward. I'm definitely getting behind that motive now. I'm going to stop harping on the quarterbacks as much and the running backs because I think that if our offense isn't moving, I definitely think it's the offensive line. I think that they're just struggling to keep consistency and stuff right now, which I think every game they're going to look a little bit better. I think their communication and their game playing together is going to start looking better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely going to be a defensive battle. And I mean, coming and looking at it, just going through some stats here, Baylor's one of the better defenses against passing in the Big 12. They're not as good against the rush. But their running is really good, and they don't really rely on their passing as much. I'd say they're like one of the lower passing offenses in the Big 12. So I think that bodes well for us trying to, that's where we're strong at and run defense. We're one of the better schools in rush defense in the Big 12 are in the top 3 right now. So it's definitely going to be a battle between, is our passing game going to be able to get up and going? Or are we going to be able to push that offensive line and then get production on the offensive side of the ball and hope that our defense can really stifle their big plays?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, like you said, the running game on their side is really a big factor for us. I think, Abraham Smith has been playing at a high volume when they do play well on offense. So I think that is, I said that Gary Bohannon threw the ball well. He hasn't threw the ball well, or hasn't threw the ball that much, I should say. But when he does throw the ball, he does throw it well. But when they've got their offense going, it seems like Abraham Smith is the guy that, that gets it going for them and really, picks up the motivation and around those guys, I guess you could say. So if West Virginia's defensive line can hold those guys into account, then I think West Virginia could be, able to hold them down to where I guess our offense could score a little bit more. But I think I'm like you. I think this offensive line for West Virginia really has to come together. I'm not really sure what it is at this point. Listening to Neil Brown's press conference on Tuesday, he said that Zach Frazier has been the most consistent player on the entire offense. And, I know that he's had some woe, maybe one woe really that you can really think of in the bad snap at Oklahoma. But it's really kind of funny to think that the most consistent player on our offense has been on our offensive line, but yet our offensive line as a whole can't gel together and get it figured out. And I'm honestly not really sure what it's going to take. Like I said last week on the reaction show, I think that Doug Nestor is probably dealing with a little bit of injury problems with his wrist, and that could have an issue. But in the same token, we're going to have a guy that's going to be able to come in and fill that spot if that's the case. If you're not going to be able to hold your man, then you're not going to be able to play that position at that time. So West Virginia's really going to have to get it together, especially on the right side of the line for me, more so than the left side of the line, if they have any hopes of getting any kind of offensive prowess going in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we saw Jordan White come in and get some snaps over Doug Nestor in the second half there last weekend, and I think that's when we started seeing our offense gel a little bit more. We got a little bit better protection, and when Daigie could stand back there, Daigie was making good throws, and he was connecting with it. You look at it, 70% or 60, high 60%, in the game that weekend. Like that's not bad. That's really what you're looking for in your quarterback. And so I think that throughout this time, it really excites me that the best lineman that we got right now is our center, because I think that just bodes well for our communication going forward, that as he gets more and more solid in his calling out, then the line can kind of like fall in behind him, as a real captain and the leader of our offensive line. He's a sophomore. It's kind of hard for him to step in that role being so young, but I think he's doing a great job at it. So I think that's definitely one of those things where we're going to see improvement in the weeks to come right there. And if not, I think Matt Moore we need to find somebody to replace Matt Moore. If you got this amount of talent and you're getting depth there, but you just can't, we're seeing a lot of false starts and stuff like that in our offensive line. A lot of our penalties are coming from our offensive line.
Yeah, I've brought it up several times in the past couple of shows, how discipline I think is the main factor for this offense. I really do think that is the biggest thing that we need to work on is those little tiny details like that. But I do believe that, like you said, Zach Frazier being so young right now and playing that type of position and playing so well, that can only be a positive moving forward for West Virginia, because that to me is the most important position on the offensive line, because everything starts with the center. The play doesn't start until the center saps the ball.
For sure.
So if he's playing at a high volume, you just fill out around him.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the point that I made a couple weeks ago. Like I often overlook this team because I think Zach Schuler was talking about it on one of his posts, and I want to reiterate that from what I said a couple weeks ago, is that you take Jarrett Daigie, Letty Brown, Isaiah Esdale, and Sean Ryan out of this offense, and all of our guys are still sophomores. There's a couple of juniors in there, but our whole entire offensive line, I think, is a junior or younger. Our Winston Wright, junior, A lot of Sam James, junior. Even sophomore at that, if you want to consider, I forget about how that COVID year affects people and stuff like that. But our offense is still really young. And, this is a team that really got gypped out of a full season last year, a whole entire normal season. And I forget that sometimes because I've seen these guys for so many years. I just expect them to be, better and better and better every year, which I think they have gotten better. But I expect them to be something not necessarily that they're not. They're still young guys working it out and figuring out our offense. And so, I think that's why I think we've seen progression from week to week, and then, took a step back last week where we really should have won that game. We came out flat. And I'm still going to chalk up that loss. That I think we just came out with our heads still stuck in Norman, and then we came out the second half. And I think we played some of the better ball that we've seen WVU play in the second half. And I hope that they really embrace that. And if we can see them come out with that same kind of energy in the first half this weekend, I think that we'll do well. And I know I've been focusing a lot on second half offense this season because it just hasn't been there. But I think that, a real crucial part to our offense this weekend is going to be getting out to a hot start. If you come out there gun slinging and you can get the offense moving, then I think that we've finally proven that, we can score in the second half if we want to. We just can't get down 17 points in the first half and try to come back and win in that perspective.
Right. And, Neil Brown touched on that, and, he doesn't understand, and I'm right there with him. How you don't get up for, one game a week. And, whether it was they still had their head stuck in Norman, whether, they just didn't get enough motivation to play this game, whatever it may be, West Virginia did show that it wasn't necessarily that they couldn't score points in the second half. I think they showed that they can't play in both halves, or haven't to this point. I think that if West Virginia can play on a more consistent basis throughout the football game, instead of just a one-half football game or a one-quarter football game, then this team is going to look a whole lot different moving forward. Like I said, I think they're right there of being, right there with Baylor's record. And we've touched on that a bunch. But to say that is one thing, to be there is another. And how many times do we do that on this show when we go over what-if scenarios? And if West Virginia would have done this differently, then they would have been, undefeated right here. Well, that's the reason teams aren't undefeated, is because they make those mistakes and those decisions, and they come out on the opposite end of the win in those football games. And then, and not only the offense, I think, needs work. I think, dare I say, Neil Brown needs a little bit of work on how he manages a football game. I said time management last week, but in another account, and another thing that he talked about on Tuesday was the fact that he called the timeout when he ran Garrett Green in on our, on the specific drive that I'm talking about, was I think the first time we were in the red zone, or the second time maybe, and he ran Garrett Green in there, and as soon as Garrett Green comes in there, they try to draw him off sides, and then they call timeout. And the reason for that was apparently Neil Brown had called the wrong play. He called a play for Deggy instead of calling the Garrett Green play, so it was on him, and they had to take the timeout. And, as the head coach, I get it. Not everybody's perfect. People are going to make mistakes. But in those situations, you have to know you've got to be there. You got to be down on earth. You got to be focused. And I don't think that anybody, from the players to the coaches, were focused in the first half of that football game last week. And I think, going into this game, and especially the next couple of weeks, you're going to be facing Oklahoma State, Iowa State, some of the better teams in the Big 12 Conference. There's not just Oklahoma. West Virginia's going to have to figure that stuff out if they plan on winning football games. And, I don't necessarily think that they won't get it figured out, but I'm not so confident that they will get it figured out, because I figured, after week 1, week 2, week 3, the things that we were seeing that we weren't happy with were just little things, and they would be corrected by now. But, we're still seeing them and not really getting any better. I wouldn't say that they're getting much worse, but they're staying stagnant, and they're not getting much better. And that's a problem if you're West Virginia.
For sure. And I mean, there's certain levels that you can forgive mistakes. You can forgive a freshman because he's a freshman. You can forgive a player because he's a player. You can forgive, an assistant because they're an assistant. But you get up to the head coach, right. Like, those kind of mistakes are a little bit less forgivable. I mean, you're a guy that's, expected to almost be perfect. When you come out and preach how your margin of error is so small, that you guys got to play, an almost perfect game in order to win some of these big games, and you're not adhering to that same thing yourself. You're just messing up. And I mean, that's, you can try to shake it off as, I got 2 playbooks. I'm trying to run 2 quarterbacks, but Neil, you can't be making those kind of mistakes. And, you hit the nail on the head when you're saying, we saw these same mistakes earlier in the year, and we were like, oh, well, that'll get cleaned up, after a couple games. And now we're 5 games in, and it's cost us. I mean, it's absolutely cost us.
Yeah, and I think it's going to only continue to cost West Virginia unless they can clean that up a little bit. and getting into Big 12 play, it doesn't seem like it's getting any better.
Yeah. So what do you think is the key for our offense to get going this weekend? Like, what do you think? What's gonna be a carry our offense if we come out and can get things rolling with our offense? What do you think it's gonna look like?
I think the key to our offense is playing well. Is I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I believe that it's strictly on the offensive line. If our offensive line on the right side can get tuned up and more disciplined, I think Letty Brown it'll open things up for him a lot more, especially on the inside zone runs that we want to run. And if we can get that going, that'll only open up those over the middle passes, and then maybe even eventually we can try to throw it deep and get some of those guys open, because I do believe that our receivers are getting open. We've seen these receivers, even on the bad throws that we've seen from Deggy at times, the receivers are wide open. They got nothing but green in front of them.
Yeah.
So I think if our offensive line can get it tuned up and just hold the defensive line into account for just enough time to get rid of the ball, or create just a big enough gap for Letty to get through there, then the sky's the limit for this offense. But they just have to. Oh man, there's so many different things that I could sit here and point out, like that could be different, and that could be different, and that could be different. But a lot of it I do believe is due to youth. But a lot of it, I'm just not a fan of Matt Moore's play calling or Neil Brown's play calling. I'm not really sure who it is at this point. But I think we are too conservative on offense. That's what I do believe. I think we should have more flashy plays in our playbook, a lot more jet sweeps and end-around plays. But we just don't see that. And I think that we're not going to see that. I'm pretty sure that Neil Brown has made it a point that they're going to be playing conservative ball all year long, because it's their way of protecting the football, I guess, because they don't trust Jared Deggy's arm. I don't believe. I think they think he's a good quarterback. I do believe that Neil Brown believes in Jared Deggy, but I also don't think that he believes in him to turn him loose to let him throw it 50 times a game downfield. I still think the offense needs to run through Letty, but like I said, the offensive line needs to get it together in order for that to happen, because Letty can only do so much by himself.
Yeah, and also Letty Brown's not hitting the right holes as well as he's not seeing the field as well as he should be seeing the field right now, and maybe a little bit better offensive line play. Without a doubt, offensive line is crucial, and I think that we're never going to get our offense going without it. But something I really liked like I said, I think Jared Deggy played a hell of a second half last weekend. And, I was talking to you, I think in the reaction show or maybe post-reaction show about, I wonder what happened in the during halftime to get Deggy to come out and play like that. Because I was like, that's definitely the most confident I've seen Deggy come out and play.
Apparently it was him.
Yeah, and apparently it was him. And, I mean, that shows a lot. The guy – going back to the summer, and I mean, if you guys have been listening, you've heard me talk about it too many times. So like those leadership charts, those responsibility, those accountability teams, and when you're down like that and you need somebody to step up, that's the man you want stepping up, and it means a lot to me that being on the fence between Garrett Green and Deggy for the past couple of weeks, as I think Deggy might come out and play one of his better games this weekend. I mean, I really think if our offensive line can get him any amount of time, I think that we're going to start seeing him connect connect more this weekend with his wide receivers on those deeper routes and stuff like that. And I think if he does that weekend, I'm gonna point back to that is he finally took that moment to be like, hey, this has got to be my team. If nobody's gonna do this for us, nobody's gonna do this for me. Nobody's gonna come out here and save me. Nobody's gonna come out here and lead this team if I don't do it.
Yeah. I think too, it's it also speaks volumes to me because virtually everyone in the Mountaineer fan base is against Jared Deggy at this point in time. They don't, no one likes him as the starter. Pretty much everyone.
Throwing the season away, hey, it's 2-3. Just see what Green can do. Screw it. It's a lost year. Throw it.
Right, right. So everyone is against Jared Deggy right now. For a kid that could feel like the entire world is against you, and you come out and you become the leader, and you're the voice of how this team gets up and gets motivated for the second half of that football game, that it speaks volumes to me of how good of a leader this kid is. And that's
I mean, to get booed and then get your backup chanted, and then to come out and play a hell of a second half. I mean, truly, he could have easily crumpled. He could have easily put his head put his head in his hands and, hey, it's whatever. These people don't even like me. It's my senior year. I'll just, walk out. They want to play Garrett Green. They can play Garrett Green. They put me in. I'll go in there, throw the ball a little bit, hand it off to Letty Brown every play, and I'll walk out of here, and nobody will ever remember the name Daggy. But to turn around and be like, hey, like I want to win this game. I care about this team. I care about the way we perform. It says a lot to me. And I mean, it's kind of pulled me away from Garrett Green some, because I looking at this team, I talked about, our quarterback needs the it factor, and that's part of it right there. I mean, that's the first time I've like felt that from him. I'm like, he gets it. He gets that if we want a successful season, then it's got to start with him. And it felt like that was the first time I ever felt like Daggy finally like grabbed the reins and said, hey, I'm here and I'm going to like buy into you guys. I'm just going to go out there and sell the ball. I mean, he was making those throws. And I mean, I think those are throws that he was typically uncomfortable with, because I think Daggy's so afraid to throw an interception sometimes, or throw it into like tough coverage, or just like give his wide receivers a shot because it's going to come back on him. I think he just was finally like, hey, like I'm going to go out here, I'm going to throw this ball and we'll see what happens. And our wide receivers made work of it. I mean, they're not dropping the balls nearly as much. When he had time, I mean, he was putting it in a place where they could catch it. He threw a little bit outside on Letty Brown there at the end, that he could have brought in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But that was, a big crucial down, and it's a lot of nerves to you. He's probably feeling it. But he comes in this weekend, a little bit less nervous probably, because, you're not at home. You can like get away from the boos of your own fans a little bit. But if we win this weekend, and I think that, like I said, I could see Jared Daggy coming out and having one of his better games. I think that I'm going to look at that and like be like, that's why. And if he does, then I'm bought in again. Like not into like our team's going to go 10-2, like I said in the preseason prediction. But our team's going to come out here and play. Like I think we're going to be over the hump of not wanting to win. I think we're going to start going from trying not to lose to wanting to win.
Well, I sure hope so. But looking at, speaking of Jared Daggy, and, we've mentioned this Baylor defense and how good that they've played up to this point. I do want to ask you, how do you think West Virginia, or, Jared Daggy specifically, I should say, will do against this defense? Because, last week they played Oklahoma State, and Spencer Sanders obviously hasn't been playing to the level of what he played up to last year. But overall, I think Oklahoma State's been playing pretty good football up to this point. And they picked Spencer Sanders off, I think, 3, maybe even 4 times last week. So this defense isn't nothing to fool with in the secondary. And they also have a pretty good defensive line as well. And, they return Terrell Bernard this season after losing him last season to Iowa State. I'm pretty sure he's their top defensive player coming back at middle linebacker. So how do you think West Virginia, or like I said, Jared Daggy specifically, will do this weekend against them? Because I think it's going to be important for him to see better defenses moving forward if he expects to progress as a player and, for this offense.
Well, I would even say that he's seen some damn good defenses so far. I mean, Oklahoma's defense, Oklahoma's defense, no slack. Virginia Tech defense, not a high school team, Mm-hmm. So I think that, Daggy's going to go into this with the same expectations he's had pretty much every weekend. And I think that Daggy specifically, because I don't think we're going to see as much Garrett Green this weekend. I think we might see Garrett Green do between 4 to 10 plays. I think that anything more than that would surprise me. I really do. I think 4 or 5 plays, honestly, is where I'm going to put it at. But I could see it getting up to as much as 10, if we get in there and he gets rolling on a drive or 2 or something like that. And he just makes more sense to keep him in for those plays. But I think that, like I said, I'm going to bank on it, and I'm going to go with the perspective of I think that Daggy's going to come out with a little bit more confidence this weekend, even though we lost last weekend. I think he's going to come out with a little bit more confidence this weekend, and and so I think that he's going to handle this defense. I think he's seen tough defenses, and I think if he can build upon what he was going with, then I think that he's up to the challenge, and I don't think that seeing another stout defense is going to scare him. I really don't.
I'm a lot like you. Like you said, that he's seen plenty of good defenses up to this point, and I wouldn't argue that at all. I think the defenses that he has faced have not been, anything to bat your eye at. So, this Baylor defense may be a little bit better than some of the ones we've played, barring maybe Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's defense is probably a little bit better than this Baylor defense, but
I do think lead the Big 12 in interceptions. Yeah, I mean their defense is no slack.
Yeah, no, not at all. But I do think that West Virginia maybe try to offset the passing game a little bit, or to try to take care of the ball, I should say, and try to run the offense more so through Letty than what they have been. And we've been hearing all season that they're going to run the offense through Letty Brown, but have yet to do so. But I think this might be a game that you see that with the defensive front, the way that it is for Baylor and the way that they've been playing. I think West Virginia needs to – I don't think they need to play conservative the way that they did against Oklahoma and chew the clock like that. I think we don't need to control the time of possession as much as we did in that game. But I do think West Virginia needs to – they need to score when they have the ball. They don't need to go with empty possessions in any quarter. You know what I mean? I don't think we should go a quarter without scoring at points, I should say. Because West Virginia, I think that's, like I've said, I think West Virginia just needs to play a full game of football, and we'll be a pretty good football team. We're not the best offense in the country. We're not the best defense in the country, but the defense might be there one day.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to, Baylor gets turnovers, and it's like, how do you respond to that? You turn the ball over, can't crumble. You can't turn around and throw two more in the same game because you threw one. So that's going to be big too. I mean, you start seeing turnovers, and then there's going to be a real ugly game.
Yeah, well, I guess one positive in that token is when Baylor does get turnovers, they can't score the ball with those turnovers because their offense can't score the ball. But West Virginia does need to win the turnover battle this weekend. And I think it would be good for West Virginia's defense to show that they can get turnovers as well. I don't think, as well as this defense has played this season, we haven't really seen a whole lot of turnovers, and not really a whole lot of scoring from our defense either. I think it would be nice to see a pick six or two or something like that. I thought that's probably a lot to ask and wishful thinking, but
a little bit. And I mean, and also on the tokens, we've talked a lot about the offense. We could talk about the defense. Baylor's offense has been struggling, like you said. I mean, they're pretty much the same as us. Good defense, and then the offense just absolutely struggles to move the ball down the field. And I think that comes down to their quarterback. So, I mean, if I'm looking at our defense versus their offense, then it's going to be – I think it's going to be our bread and butter that's going to if we win the game through defense, it's going to be our defensive line because that just seems to be what's saving us right now. And Baylor seems like they're going to want to run the ball more. Like they're second in the Big 12 in running and way down seventh in passing. So they're definitely going to come out and try to run the ball more on us, which bodes well for our defense. And I think that's going to have to come back. Our linebackers are going to have to play super tight and physical ball. Our defensive line is going to have to get penetration. And, we've seen our defensive backs play. Darryl Porter Jr. has been playing really well. I mean, he came out from, that first game looking a little bit rough, and he's looked really good the last couple of games.
Yeah. I think the only person that I can really have anything against on our defense so far this year, and he hasn't really played that bad, is Sean Mahone. And, he's the one that's really given up the most big plays. But even him, he's came around and started to play a lot better in that secondary and show that he has the skill to be out there too, because for a little while I was like, man, this guy's a liability. He's getting burned every single time.
Yeah.
But looking back last week against Texas Tech, especially in the second half when West Virginia really kind of showed that they were, in the ball game and had their heads there, I think he made some really good defensive plays on that back end. And he also, had a few swatted balls as well. So, as much as this secondary doesn't get respected at times, I believe, I think they're starting to. And I think that before too long, I think it's going to flop, and this whole conference is just going to be known as nothing but defenses with the way that it's looking. But with that said, we went over our X factor for our offense. What do you think our X factor for our defense is going to be, to stop their offense?
Yeah, so this is the first time I'm going to look at. Like I said, it's going to be on our defensive line to play up to their standard if we want any kind of chance in this game. But on that same token, I think that our linebackers are going to be the place to keep an eye on, because if you got a team that's liking to rush for a lot, you need linebackers that are able to hit holes and hit holes hard. You don't really want your defensive backs up there making tackles 7 yards in on a rushing attack. So I think our linebackers are going to have to play disciplined football and not get caught looking, and play fast, play physical. We're really high up in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. I think we got to keep that rolling. I think that's a statistic we need to keep just absolutely pounding on and just keep getting in the backfield and disrupting them, because when you're looking at 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12, it's a lot better than, 2nd and 7 or 3rd and 3,
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the defensive line has got to be my X factor too, because, if you look at Baylor and the way they run the ball, they like to do a lot of inside zone, just like West Virginia wants to do. And so I think Akeem Mesidor, Josh Chandler-Samito, and those guys, that fill in that inside part of the line on those inside run schemes, they're going to have to come to play and put their hat on the ball, and really kind of stop that Baylor rushing game from rushing up in there. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem on those end around plays. I think West Virginia's defensive ends are both really good at getting out there and forcing them inside. But I do think it's predominantly on the defensive line this weekend for West Virginia to keep things in check, so our offense can have enough time to get things rolling.
And a big part, like you said, come to play. That's one thing that killed us last weekend is like the defense didn't come to play. And I mean, you can give them a little bit of leeway because I've said before, they were carrying our team, and it's really hard to get your game in the your mental game right when you're trying your hardest and your offense isn't coming through to help you out at all. Right. And so, coming to play is going to be another big part. If they come out flat again, then you're going to see us get down a little bit. And like I said, we got to come out hot. Our team's got to come out firing if we want a chance in this game. I don't think we're going to go into Waco and get down by 17 and be able to come back and even make it a game. Yeah. So, you got to come out to play. You can't have a game like you did last time where you're really relying on Dante Stills to come out there and save everybody.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned that, I think, that's a big point for me as well. I think in a more broader sense of it, I think that if the team comes out and looks flat this weekend, to me, that's on Neil Brown. If you can't get your team 2 weeks in a row to get motivated and up for a football game, then there's a major problem. And if everything that I've said good about the culture at West Virginia, if there's 2 games in a row in the Big 12 conference that you can't get up for, some changes need to be made. And I don't know what
that's a cultural issue, and that's been the one thing we haven't had to worry about.
Exactly. The whole time that Neil Brown's been in Morgantown, that's the one thing I haven't worried about is the culture up there. But I do think that West Virginia will come out motivated this weekend. I don't think that will be the case at all because I say things in a negative sense sometimes, but all in all, I do like Neil Brown. I still do like, overall what he has got going for West Virginia moving forward. And I do believe that, in the coming seasons, once he has his recruiting classes in place and his system in place with those recruits, that I think West Virginia will start to flourish and we'll see a lot more of what West Virginia can really do as a full football team. But speaking back to Baylor this weekend, we've talked about our X factors on both offense and defense. I guess we'll go ahead and give our score predictions for this weekend. Jordan has sent me over his score prediction. I will wait to give that one last, just to add a little suspense. But we'll go ahead and we'll start with you, Bradley. What do you think it's going to be?
Okay, like I said, I'm going into this with. I think Jarrett Doege's going to have one of his better games. And I think it is going to be a defensive battle. I think, these are I heard somebody talking about today, I think it was it might have been Tony Caridi in the head coach's show or something along those lines, talking about Baylor and West Virginia are some of the slowest offenses in the Big 12 right now. I mean, our tempo, I think we're the 2 slowest tempo offenses in the Big 12 right now. So you're definitely not going to see a lot of high-flying balls. You're not going to see a lot of – Baylor's definitely a more explosive team than we are. But that being said, I think every offensive possession is going to be super crucial. And so the team that, capitalizes on their offense a little bit better is going to have the best chance to win this ball game. I think it's going to be a low-scored one. I think it's going to be a close one. I'm going to give it to us. I think that Neil Brown's going to have his team ready, and I think Jerry Day is going to come out to play. And I'm going to keep it low. I think it's going to be 17-14. I think we're going to get it with another 3. I can't give us any more than a 3-point win because that's not what our season's been so far.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. I'm a lot like
17-14.
I really would love to pick West Virginia in this game. But looking at them on paper and I get that these 2 teams virtually are a mirror image of each other. And I do know that, but to me, I think that West Virginia has played Oklahoma and they've played Virginia Tech. And if you count Virginia Tech as a quality win, which I'm on the fence about right now with how they've played in the recent weeks.
Still better than any win that Baylor has outside of the Big 12.
Outside of the Big 12. But they did beat Iowa State, and they played Oklahoma State a lot better than what that score looked like. And it wasn't a 24-14 game to me. It was more like a 17-14 looking game in my mind if you watch that game. But I don't think West Virginia is going to have the offensive firepower to just get it going. If they were to show progression in the last couple of weeks, I might be able to give it to them. But in my mind, they've just stayed stagnant, like I said. So I got to go 17-10. I'm picking Baylor, and I hate to do that, and it hurts my heart to do that, but I really hope West Virginia comes out and proves me wrong this weekend. But I've for a few games in a row now, I've picked West Virginia with my heart instead of my brain.
For sure.
That's the best way
I feel
to
like I'm
put
still
it.
doing it, but it's just like
It's
like
hard,
I said,
it's
if it
hard to
wasn't
pick
for
against them, but reality is reality, and West Virginia just does not show that they're getting any better on offense. And I hate it because Letty Brown had so much potential coming into this season, but the offensive line just isn't getting it going. But I guess I'll go ahead and give you Jordan's prediction with that one, and his is 21-17 Baylor. He hasn't picked West Virginia to win any of the last 3 contests, and I don't see him picking West Virginia to win any of them anytime soon if they don't show any progression. But we're more realistic here on the Country Roads webcast. We try not to put our blue and gold glasses on, and we try to just give straight facts. That way, that whenever West Virginia really is a powerhouse, that we're really telling you the truth, and we're not just telling you what we think is going to happen. So.
Yeah, and then like I said, I'm going off of it just the fact that I really loved what I saw in the second half, even though it wasn't spectacular play. It's not like we came out and played flawless ball there in the second half, but it's just there were some more of the intangibles that we've been missing that I saw some in the second half there.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think we played our best half of football offensively against Texas Tech in the second half.
For sure. I mean, and it's just like it's just like something I believed in right there. It gave me a little bit of hope, even though we lost. And, we come out and just don't show any of that again. We lose it again and we come out flat again. Then I'm definitely going to be right there with you guys. And I don't see us, it's going to be hard for me to pick us to win for a while.
Yeah. Hopefully if they can get the ball rolling this weekend, which they really, really need to avoid going on, a really bad 3-game skid, potentially more than that going into the coming weeks. I think West Virginia just needs to, come together as a football team. And
we are needing that bye week in a bad way.
Yes, we are, brother. Yes, we are. So hopefully by the bye week we can be a little bit happier on this podcast. But unless you got anything else, Bradley, I think that's all I got on the Baylor Bears and this matchup this weekend.
Yeah. Outside of the Baylor Bears, though, was a positive note, thinking about Neil Brown and his future at WVU. The reason why I'm still bought in is because his culture, like we talked about, and his recruiting class. And I've been really worried about that recruiting class with having such a messy year, not just play-wise, but also coaching-wise, because, kids are knowledgeable of that. They're keeping up with it. And Schuler over there at I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but he went in through and he had contacted a bunch of our recruits, Travius Lathan and them, and was asking them about their thoughts so far through West Virginia's rocky start. And it was really encouraging to see the players talk about it because not only, and I'm sure he may have, questioned them this way, but kids were still talking about how they fit into this scheme and where they're going to help out in this kind of team and, kind of like where we're lacking and stuff like that. Kids talk about, well, when I come in, I'm going to be able to help with this, this, and that. And it was really encouraging to see them still really bought in on the program. So that confidence isn't wavering yet. But if our recruiting class started to waver some and we started dropping kids and we started losing some of that things that make it Neil Brown, then that's when I would start to be worried. And so keep an eye out for that. The second that starts happening is the second you see me start to pull myself off of the Neil Brown train, because if you can't keep the kids bought in, then he's not going to be able to keep me bought in.
Yeah, well, I'm the same way. I think that right now that, the only thing that makes me positive-minded for the future is the recruiting class and how well that recruiting class looks. And I think that if you look at what's in that recruiting class and the way that he wants to run this offense, I think that really is what makes sense to me moving forward on how, and why it makes me so confident about this team moving forward is because the players that he's got coming in are more set for his offense than what he has now. Like, we talk about it all the time, how Jared Dickey's not a mobile quarterback. Neil Brown needs a mobile quarterback in his offense for it to be successful. We've learned that. He had it at Troy, and that's why they were, a large part of their success came from their quarterbacks being such a dual threat. And so, like I said, West Virginia hopefully can get it going this year to where they don't lose those recruits. I know a lot of people were thinking that Nico might flop whenever whenever he had that big game on national TV versus whenever we lost to Oklahoma, the very next week. But, I don't think it's so black and white for these recruits. You know what I mean? They're not going to decommit just because a team loses 1, 2, 3 games a season.
And I mean, he was committed to Florida State, and like, let's not, mix any words about how Florida State was not, it's not on the greatest trajectory in the world. And he didn't leave because Florida State's bad. He left because Florida State recruited another kid in his class.
Right. And he wants to be the starter.
Yeah. And so I don't think he's worried about how a team's performing right now. I think he's worried about what does he have around him, and he's great at recruiting people around him, and who does he have leading him in the way. And so I think that he's really bought in on us. And like we said on here, I'm not worried about Nico flopping anytime soon, especially decommitting from 2 schools is you don't see that too often from kids. So I think he's pretty bought in, found his place, and he's ready to go.
Well, and I don't want to get off on a tangent because we do got to end soon, but like you mentioned earlier, how youthful and young this offense really is. I think that's a very large positive for someone like Nico coming into an offense like this. And then you see even more offensive line recruits coming in next year. And then you have Caden Prather, who's, going to do nothing but develop into a better player as he gets better, gets older. Sam James, Sean Ryan, all these guys that, can do nothing but develop while Nico is there, and they can also help Nico.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot more leaders on the team next year. I think that they're still having a hard time figuring that out. Everybody's looking to Daggy. Hasn't really stepped up to that challenge just yet. Like I said, I saw more of it last week, which is, encouraging. But, there's no real leaders on our offense at the side of the ball.
Right. Well, hopefully we can get it figured out this weekend. We're not too confident in the Country Roads webcast right now in the Mountaineers, but hopefully moving forward they can get it together. But I think that's all we got for today. I did want to mention before we go, guys, coming up in the next few weeks, I'm going to be, and a couple of these guys are going to be joining me every now and then on the Country Roads webcast Hoops version. We're actually going to be following the basketball team this year and doing podcasts every week following the game and before the game, just like we do in football games, except the episodes will be a little bit shorter, obviously because it is basketball season and a lot more to cover from week to week. So we split the episodes into smaller versions and release more episodes throughout the week. So you guys be on the lookout for that. And as always, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those